But do you see why this makes people think that this man who has all this power, he's the world's richest man, he thinks he has a right to influence our politics? It makes people, it's why, we started this conversation saying superlatives, it's why people loathe you. I mean, some people do loathe you.
Yes, some people do.
But do you understand why? Do you think what you're doing is helpful for Western democracy?
Maybe some people do loathe me. And that's probably true. I don't care. But the fact that, as you pointed out, 250 million people follow me is that I think a lot more people actually like me than don't. And I think a lot more people hate you and the media more than you realize.
Hello， 大家好，我是李恩。我们都知道，自从这个 X-Space 公司上市，成为了不但是全球富豪，还是万亿富豪的伊隆马斯克呢，过去一直以来都是上许多各家媒体专访啦、采访不断。很多时候这个专访不外乎就是谈他对 AI 的愿景啦、对人类未来的展望啦。那当然马斯克的专访多半其实是很值得一听的嘛。但是呢，有时候也不会说就觉得好像有什么太新鲜，或者说让人觉得非常的精彩。
是你说的，我可没说啊。
不过没有想到呢，我最近听了一个马斯克在2026年7月的时候接受英国的权威财经媒体《经济学人》他的旗舰的访谈节目的 Insider 局内人的专访呢，这个长达90分钟的专访让我从中间一度差点打瞌睡到精神焕发了起来突然发现太好看了，太精彩了。为什么呢？因为这一次在德州的这个特斯拉超级工厂来进行的深度对话呢，是由《经济学人》的总编辑Zanny Minton-Beatles 女士呢来亲自主持。那我们简称她张妮啦整场访谈呢，本来前半段只是围绕着这个科技的愿景的高谈阔论那当然张妮也是一开始的时候大力称赞了马斯克他许多的丰功伟业结果没有想到慢慢的演变成后半段在政治跟言论自由还有欧洲局势上面的激烈交锋。这一场访谈居然会后马斯克甚至在他的社交平台 X 上面公开痛骂这个总编辑张妮简直就是西方的叛徒traitor to the West。Oh my god， 这怎么会导致的这样的一场变成火药味四射的专访呢？这个100年的传统媒体，我们知道经济学人其实算是相当，不要说在英国了，在全世界都可以算是经济权威的重磅媒体那这一次他们采访的时间点之所以非常微妙，是因为 SpaceX 正值上市的财报发布前后，马斯克个人的身价突破1亿美元嘛。那经济学人他又因为已经创立了182年，而且过去呢是一直特别标榜主张经济自由主义，所以他们就想要趁182周年呢，来针对这种科技的起点AI 的发展以及政商关系呢，还有就是马斯克近年日益激进的一些政治言论呢，来进行全方位审视。因为前半段我们就不看了，好，我们直接待会跳到最精彩的后半段。前半段就是说这个 AI 的未来啦，觉得怎么样啦？然后呢，马斯克就提出说 AI 与金钱失效论因为马斯克预测嘛，AI 的综合智力在5年内呢要超越全人类智力总和，再加上随着人形机器人 Optimus 呢与 AI 会实现物质丰足，所以马斯克过去就老喜欢讲说2036年他认为金钱是将失去意义的。可是呢，这个说起来其实坦白讲，一般人也很难想象嘛，对吧？那所以呢，张妮女士呢也这个开个玩笑，就说，可是你的股东会不会并不这么想他们还是非常乐于使用金钱那再来就是说，关于 AI 带来的安全，马斯克坦言他认为 AI 未来带来毁灭性的风险几率大概是10%到20%。那问到关于这个 OpenAI 的执行长奥特曼呢，过去跟他的恩恩怨怨他也愿意放下分歧来多进行对话。那对于中国 AI 的实力评估呢，马斯克也赞扬了中国最近出的这 Kimi K3 的模型嘛那认为呢它是非常有竞争性的那在这个阶段的时候，张妮其实都算是一种扮演引导或者说适度质疑的提问那马斯克也以风趣前瞻的企业家姿态呢来详加回答。但没有想到开始了，慢慢这个张妮其实对马斯克是有很多个人的意见的他就把话锋一转，慢慢转向到最近马斯克在于欧洲政治地缘还有言论审查的重炮批判呢，就让这整个现场气氛急转直下。那到底这个内容有多精彩呢？先让我们一起来好好观赏。那我在中间再适度做一点点的注解，就让我们免于上半场的无聊跟枯燥 直接让大家精神焕发的来一起享受。这是我所看过马斯克最精彩交锋，甚至看到马斯克他的一个辩论术他是如何对于一个有意要攻击这样的一个有备而来的总编呢，马斯克是如何不留余地的重炮回击。就让我们一起开始吧 ，Let's go。
Let's go back more immediately to the here and now. We've talked about concentration of control in your companies. You've made a very good case for why you should have it. You also have, through Starlink, incredible geopolitical power. I mean, I'm one of your customers.
Thank you.
Excellent product.
It would be great.
But without them, the Ukrainians would have been in serious, serious trouble. And when
Yes, the Ukrainian government has publicly thanked Starlink many times for being instrumental in defending Ukraine.
And you recently decided to prevent the Russians in the occupied territories from having access to Starlink.
Well, no, we were never at any point selling Starlink to Russians.
But they were grabbing it, right? They were using it, and you've now stopped them from doing that.
Well, they essentially got Starlink units that they ordered through Ukraine, and then smuggled them into eastern Ukraine where the Russians are. And were then using them, in some cases, for attacks. Now, in order to address this, what we worked with the Ukrainian government to create a whitelist of approved Starlink terminals. Now, this has some downsides because a whole bunch of people who were just innocent users of Starlink and just trying to access the internet for work or for education now don't have Starlink.
These are geopolitical decisions of consequence. How do you feel about having that power? You can determine the outcome of wars. How does that feel? And is it right that you should have that power?
Well, I'm not sure we're determining the ultimate outcome of the war in Ukraine. I think I do hope that there's some sort of peace agreement reached soon because for 2 or 3 years now, the border has barely moved, and every day there are lots of people dying at the front line, and I think there's a lot of wishful thinking here of people saying, well, Russia should completely withdraw, etc. But this is not realistic. I really think there needs to be some a piece with that is that we have to be pragmatic about this. What I think would be terrible is if there's another 3 years of people dying senselessly at the front lines, and you have to say well, how do you explain to the children of the men that are dying at the front lines? Russia, on the Russian side too, by the way, they're being conscripted and sent there. I am quite offended by sort of fancy diplomats who have 7-course dinners in luxurious places while people are dying at the front lines, and who pontificate about how Russia should withdraw, but Russia's not going to withdraw. So there really needs to be an accepted peace along those lines.
And do you think it's your responsibility to play a role in tipping the scales towards what you see as the right way to peace?
I've been advocating peace for a long time. I posted a few years ago that there really needs to be some concession here to Russia. This is not me being pro-Russia. I'm just being pragmatic. Or people will die for years with nothing achieved, and that is exactly what happened.
I don't know. I mean, the Ukrainians are doing pretty well right now at, with their incredible drone capacity hitting inside Russia, and the kind of general consensus is that the balance of the war is shifting. But my point is not so much
Ukraine
about what
is not going to retake those territories. It is not going to happen.
My interest is really on whether you think, given that you have through Starlink, you have an incredible power, whether it's appropriate that you should wield it. And that's quite rare. that an individual actor has such power by turning on and off a capability to shape conflict.
Well, is there something you think I should do differently?
I mean, I think you were right to support Ukraine. I think that, as it won't surprise you, I think that the Russian aggression was, for many, many reasons, an appalling aggression. And I think that was an important thing that you did.
我常听到很多自认为资深的记者在采访马斯克的时候，会问的一个我总觉得很不聪明的问题就是说你现在掌控整个星链了，哇，那你光是一个商业帝国，你的影响力都可以说超过可能一个国家，对吧？那没有错，当然你可以提出说，作为一个商业的巨擘你对于这种科技公司，它对于战争的影响力可能远大于一个国家，你怎么看？你这样问就好多了。你如果问马斯克说，你是否适合拥有这样的权利？我觉得这实在是一个很不聪明的提问。这就好像你在问一个美国总统说，你是否适合拥有这样的权利，可以对伊朗发动攻击，是一样的嘛？就是说，自然而然，现在资本主义社会，它确实造就了像马斯克或是马克祖沃这批人，哪怕你说 Facebook 这种社交媒体好了，它某种程度上也在掌控一整个国家的话语权啊。所以我实在是觉得这种问法实在是不怎么特别或者说谁都可以问得出来。那马斯克就直接很聪明的问他说，那你觉得我不应该照现在的做法继续下去吗？意思就是我都不要参与，那我的星链也不要借给乌克兰。你看主持人张妮马上就语塞就觉得说没有，你还是这样做得很好。因为张妮他是很左派政治的倾向嘛，他是非常高度支持乌克兰，所以像这种左派意识形态就有那种味道跑出来了，我就不是很欣赏。就是说如果你要真的认真的去质疑一个商业巨擘对全球的影响力，那你为什么又要碰到乌克兰的时候你又觉得说可以，那你就继续。不过呢，这边还好火药味还不浓，但是你已经开始慢慢发现出，张妮他在谈到这种地缘政治的时候，他对马斯克已经开始有一些维持或者说负面的评价了。
Yeah, I mean, I did a very deep dive into the background of that conflict to understand exactly what was going on. I'm reminded of the old adage that there are no angels in war.
It's a similar tone, I think, about domestic politics, where you've played a big role domestically, politically here. You spent a lot of money on Donald Trump's re-election. After the election, you got very actively involved. Through Doge, you tried to cut a lot of spending, reshape the government. How do you feel? That it wasn't hugely successful in the sense that, there wasn't nearly as much spending cut as you tried. How do you, as you look back on that, do you regret getting so involved in politics? Do you think it was a good thing to do?
I think I got a little too involved in politics, got carried away, frankly. So the goal with the sort of Doge stuff was to try to do something about the deficit, which is massive, where the interest payments exceed the amount of money spent on the Department of War. Like basically, if you add up all the money spent on what is now the Department of War and the and intelligence in the U.S., that is smaller than the interest payments on the debt. So that we need to sort of take a close look at spending and make sure that money is being spent in sensible ways and that it is not wasted or spent on fraudulent activities. I got a lot of flack from this for this, obviously, but the people don't understand just how simple it was for the Doge team to approve payments. If we literally we just asked to have the contact information of the recipient or some evidence that, say, money was going to its intended purpose. But over and over that we're told we need to wire money for some sort of important cause in Africa, and we're like, okay, but the wiring instructions are to Deloitte & Touche in D.C., in Washington, D.C., not to Africa. So we would like to send the money to Africa. Can you please connect us with the recipients so we can send them the money directly? And then we'd get silence.
We don't need to relitigate Doge. I have no doubt that there's a lot of waste in the U.S. government. I think probably...
Much worse than anyone could possibly imagine.
But the way, I think it is a fair criticism that the way you shut down a whole bunch of programs probably in fact, certainly caused unnecessary suffering. I mean,
No.
No?
No.
You don't buy that at all?
It caused a lot of complaining.
You don't buy the idea that anybody, to put it really crudely and simply, any kid in Africa died because of the suddenness with which...
Zero.
I just don't think that's right. I just don't think... I've had people reporting in Africa who...
How many NGOs are there that could step in? Because bear in mind, it happened quickly. And there are literally tens of thousands of NGOs.
Not everyone functions as fast as you do. If funding is cut off for antiretrovirals overnight, and it just stops, then people will die when they don't have access to them. And it just...
Only if they cannot get funding for that. But the Gates Foundation has $50 billion. What about that? What about any one of a number of organizations? What about
well, in lots of these countries, USAID...
Mackenzie, whatever her last name is, used to be Bezos, gave $50 billion. What about that?
But, let's be practical. In many of these countries, USAID was the biggest funder. But I don't want to have an argument.
USAID was a political organization.
It may also have been that, but it was the biggest funder of healthcare systems. So I'm very
biggest
sure that there was
funder of regime change.
And there may well be benefits from having changed
Also,
the system.
USAID funding was not stopped. It was moved to the State Department.
It was stopped. There were huge numbers of things shut down in Africa that were
there were claims
related.
of this. These claims are false. They're nonsense, and absolute nonsense. But obviously, just for when funding is stopped for fraudulent organizations or for something, do you think they're going to say, well, please keep funding the fraud? Or do you think they're going to come up with a sad story that sounds sympathetic in order to get the funding restored? Obviously, it will be the latter, and that's exactly what they did. But zero died because of
that's
Doge.
That's what I would take issue with. Because I think I actually have a lot of sympathy for the change of the aid regime that the US under the Trump administration has precipitated. However, I think the pace and the suddenness with which it happened will almost certainly have caused unnecessary suffering and deaths. And I think both of those can be true.
No, I think that's totally false.
Okay. Well,
let's obviously false because there are the amount of funding we're talking about is far less than what can be done than what can be supported via private via foundations like the Gates Foundation or Mackenzie Bezos's foundation. She's given away tens of billions of dollars. The Gates Foundation has tens of billions of dollars. They are capable of acting very quickly. And if they didn't, I would say they're equally responsible.
I see. Okay.
Obviously.
All right. Fair point.
Zero people died because of Doge.
I hear you loud and clear.
Zero.
Hear you loud and clear.
Obviously.
好，这里我觉得马斯克回答非常聪明。好，第一个就是说，国际开发署 USA 这个我们以前也做过影片谈过。那基本上马斯克观念就是说，你别的地方不提哈，如果你偏偏提非洲的话，那不可能，一定是死亡率零。为什么？因为我们都知道比尔盖茨基金会它最大的主要的500亿的资金呢，全部都是在非洲的这个关怀上。好，特别是像艾滋病这些。问题是你盖这500亿基金会，又不是说钱已经全部花完了，对吧？那凭什么说我 USA 美国国际开发署的资金断裂之后，非洲人民就会立刻得艾滋死掉呢？就没有这个对抗艾滋的接种疫苗可以继续打呢？这个本来就是比尔盖茨基金会在做的。换句话说，假设今天好，就算说美国国际开发署真的钱有送到非洲，真的没有人在从中中饱私囊，现在钱变少了，那你艾滋基金会的人道救援关怀就应该提高嘛，也就是你的基金会的500亿你就要多花嘛。所以这种很单向式的认为说一旦没钱就有人死，好像500亿比尔盖茨的基金会还有贝索斯的基金会的钱都不存在一样，这个实在是非常更何况不要说就是马斯克也证明了就是他们想要直接抖内汇款到非洲那边的联系窗口，可是就没人啊，就是你国内这边的就没有下文啊，不提供，所以表示什么？表示根本没有这个汇到非洲去的事情嘛，根本就是有人在美国就把这钱给污了嘛，所以这也是为什么张尼他就无可辩驳他在这个事情上面呢，他又输了一次想要定马斯克的罪，可是马斯克呢，用非常理性且合逻辑的角度告诉他说， 不可能我们一旦停钱了，在非洲那边就好像没有在帮助一样。帮助是很多基金会一直在持续进行的事情，所以如果他们真的认为紧急的话，那他们就应该改变做法。好比说比尔盖茨就可以提出说，没有了美国政府现在的援助呢，我们愿意提高基金会的一个加速播放资金的速度，这也听起来很合理嘛，对吗？不过我们也可以看得出来，这个时候两个人已经火药味是越来越浓厚了。
Domestically, you stepped away from Doge. It was hard to do what you were trying to do. You've just explained it. But this administration has gone in directions that I suspect you were not expecting 2.5 years ago. The war in Iran.
I'm not going to agree with everything any administration does.
Are you disappointed by this administration?
No, I think this administration, on balance, is excellent. No administration is perfect, but it's vastly better than the alternative.
Can we talk about Europe? A place that you are very, very focused on.
I'm not that focused on Europe.
I think judging by your posts, you're pretty concerned about Europe. You support...
I've once in a while I post something.
It's reasonably frequently. It's not once in a while. But because I'm genuinely interested in this. As someone who lives in Europe, lives in London.
Yeah.
You paint a picture... Well, first of all, you support not just the populist right, but the far right. In fact, very fringe parties in some countries.
No, I support the normal people.
Okay.
What do you call the far right? Falsely.
You think is the normal person. Okay.
Yes. Literally, you could go back 10 or 15 years, and these policies were completely normal. In fact, one of the tricks that I think is funny. One thing that's quite funny is to take a speech from Obama and Hillary, and then go to someone and say, who's sort of on the sort of what I call the lunatic left, and say, what do you think of the speech by Trump? Oh wow, he's the worst person ever. Actually, that was a speech by Obama, or actually, that was a speech by Hillary.
I agree. No, I agree that the center of gravity in this country has shifted. Certainly, the Democratic Party shifted to the left. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people like Rupert Lowe. I'm talking
about
people.
It's actually just normal people. It's just normal people. It's just normal people. And and here are the principles. And tell me which of these sound terrible. That we should have secure borders. That we should have safe cities. That we should have sensible spending. Which of those three are far right fringe?
No,
and I would like to just admonish you and the media for the absurd characterization of the far right. It is false and misleading and nonsense. Please keep this part in.
We'll keep all of this in, but let me
Don't cut this part.
Let me push back on that. Let me push back on that
because
you have
nonsense.
Elon, you have close to 250 million followers on X.
Yeah,
you say things like,
popular guy.
Quote, civil war in Britain is inevitable. Just a question of when.
On the current trends, yes.
When were you last in the UK?
A few years ago.
Exactly. So I live there. I'm there the whole time. That is nonsense.
You live a cloistered existence.
No, I don't, actually. And the numbers also disprove what you say.
What numbers?
All the numbers about crime. London is a much safer city than any city in the United States. Violent crime in the UK is not where you think it is. In fact, it's coming down. You have painted, and because you have so many followers, so many Americans believe it, a kind of view that Europe and the UK are kind of, overrun with terrifying Muslim immigrants. There's rape on every corner. There's a sort of civilizational destruction.
I haven't said any of those things.
Just not. Well, you say civil war in Britain is inevitable. And
yes, if current trends continue, it is.
Why?
Well, if you have a large and rapidly growing group of people whose beliefs are antithetical to Western beliefs, at some point there will be a reckoning. That they will try to implement their views, and those who oppose it will oppose it, and that's what you call civil war. And obviously, this is the trend. And you absolutely do live in a cloistered existence. And if you'd like, we can go on a tour of Britain.
Sure. I'd be very happy to come on a tour of Britain.
And you will see for yourself.
You come see my country that I live in all the time, and you haven't been to a few years ago.
I've been there literally 100 times.
But when was the last time?
Literally a few years ago.
You know why this exercises me? Because you have really shaped opinion about the UK. And so many Americans I come across, and I have conversations with, and they'll be, and I just had one the other day, along the order of, oh, London's such a dangerous place. How can you know? There are sort of grooming gangs everywhere. There's violence everywhere. This is a picture that people get from things that you post or that are posted on X. And for example, you're posting for, what was it, 48 hours of Citizen Vigilante. That film, which,
Yes.
paints a dystopian, I've watched it.
Yes.
It was not fun. I watched it yesterday. It's not a very good movie. But it also paints a dystopian picture of Europe. And it glorifies vigilante violence. It glorifies the murdering of a Muslim immigrant family. I honestly think that it is irresponsible for you to put that up on X.
I think that it's a movie, and it's worth watching.
You're clearly suggesting Europe is a dystopian place and you...
Yes, I mean, why aren't you doing more to fight censorship in Europe? Why aren't you? Seem to be doing nothing to fight censorship in Europe.
That's not true. I think that
They put
there
people
are issues
in
with free
prison in the
speech
UK for social media posts. Do you think that's appropriate?
No, and we've written editorials against it. But
Okay,
I don't
great.
think.
Then
And my point
that's
is
the
that
sort of
the
thing
UK,
that I think is bad.
And I think and I agree with you, but I don't think you have to glorify vigilante violence and kind of, post the things that you are doing and paint an entirely inaccurate picture of Europe that you do.
I don't think it is.
We should do a tour of the UK.
Yes, and one of
because
Brussels
the
too.
UK has actually been very good at integrating immigrants. The UK is very effective at doing that. There are problems. I'm the first to admit that there are problems.
Yes, there are major problems.
There are problems, but it really is not what you are describing to or suggesting to your 240 million followers it is.
I think it is.
And I think there's a problem.
No, I think I'm spot on.
We'll have to...
And that's why you have freedom of speech, or at least
Well, freedom of
don't
speech
anymore
allows
in the
people
UK.
to say things that are wrong, but your point is not that you're not just saying, I have every right to say what I want. You're saying, I am right about Europe, and I really don't think you are.
I think I am.
I think you will find that most people in Europe, or many people in Europe, don't think you're right about it. But let's come to that.
Yes,
But
because the media keeps ignoring reality.
I don't think that's true either.
And they're programmed by the TV and conventional media.
And why are you... This is, I guess, even to me, sort of the bigger picture question. Why do you focus on this? Why are you interested in it? Because on the one hand, we started this conversation and you described to me this extraordinarily transformative, amazing, civilizational changing stuff that's happening in the next 10 years.
Yes.
And yet you're also, an ongoing participant in the worst kind of tribalism, cesspit of social media. Like, how does that fit? Are you, on the one, they're two very different views of the world.
Yeah, I don't think they're inconsistent.
But why do you do the latter one, the tribalism? I mean, people say that you're a racist. People say that you're, there's all kinds of things said about you, which I'm sure you would disagree with. But I just don't understand. What is the motivation for doing that? Are you fomenting...
My partner is she's half Indian, and and I have 4 children with her. One of them was named after a famous Indian physicist. So I would say I'm not racist. And also, if you look at the people that are employed at my companies, we have senior executives of all races. I don't think there's any racism there.
Are you anti-Muslim?
I'm against having if people are coming to a country with antithetical views. I am against that. I'm against that. I'm against. I'm against rape and murder. I'm against the imposition of rules and laws that are contrary to what we've come to accept in the West. And I think it's a crying shame that the sort of traditional media, like you, don't recognize this.
First of all, I think that you hugely exaggerate the challenges that Europe faces. Secondly, in areas I completely agree with you. I think that, the constraints on freedom of speech in the UK in certain areas are problematic. What worries me is that the people you are supporting are really quite vile people in some areas. Like some members of the AfD, Alice Weidel, whom I've met, is a perfectly thoughtful person. But in her party are some real neo-Nazis, are some really, really awful people. And your blanket support of this kind of party with 240 million followers means that you have a power in Europe that I think perhaps you don't realize the scale of impact you have. But you can...
Well, good. I hope I am having a big impact.
But why? Why should you? Why should you be able to shape European politics? You don't even live there.
I think of it as the sort of the West collectively.
But do you see why this makes people think that this man who has all this power, he's the world's richest man, he thinks he has a right to influence our politics? It makes people... It's why, we started this conversation saying superlatives. It's why people loathe you. I mean, some people do loathe you.
Yes, some people do.
But do you understand why? Do you think what you're doing is helpful for Western democracy?
Maybe some people do loathe me. And that's probably true. I don't care. But the fact that, as you pointed out, 250 million people follow me is that I think a lot more people actually like me than don't. And I think a lot more people hate you and the media more than you realize. Do you realize the media is despised? Do you realize that journalists, the view of journalists is like, it's like a favorable view of journalists is like 15%.
I do know that in the United States.
So the shoe is on the other foot. They hate you. They hate you far more than they hate me.
I think there is certainly a loss of trust in journalism. I think in part there have been mistakes by journalists and journalism. I totally acknowledge that. But I also think that the kind of polarized environment, particularly on social media, fostered by the kinds of things you are pushing on X, actually helps this, makes it worse.
I don't think so. I think you're the problem, the media. And speaking of loathing, you're loathed far more than I am. And you don't seem to even realize that.
I think very few people know who I am relative to you, so I don't think I play in the same game.
The media collectively. So, I mean, you're hated. Do you even know that? You probably don't.
I like to think that I'm aware of my own personal shortcomings and the Economist's shortcomings and our worldview's shortcomings.
Yeah.
But what we stand for, as you know, is liberal values, traditional, classical liberal values, where we worry about concentrations of power and we believe in the individual and the dignity of the individual and individual freedom.
Right.
I
agree with that.
firmly believe that. And I have long thought that you were a classical liberal. But when I read what you post, classical liberal, J.S. Mill, limited government, individual freedom.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But when I read what you post on your feed, I sometimes wonder whether you really do believe in that.
I literally said, look, I believe in safe cities, secure borders, and sensible spending with respect to government. That doesn't make me right-wing at all, in the least.
Does the US or do European countries score better on those?
The US is better.
No.
Yes.
Safe cities, much more dangerous in the US than the UK. Sensible spending, bigger deficit here, out of control. You failed to reduce it. Secure borders now under the Trump administration. I agree with you. Before not. But on 2 out of 3, unequivocally, Europe is in a better place. Yet you seem to paint a picture of Europe being a hellhole.
I don't think Europe's a hellhole.
Okay, we can agree on something.
When did I ever say that?
Well, the picture you paint of Europe
you're making up things.
No, I'm not.
You're just literally making it up.
You say civil war in Britain is inevitable, and then you basically proselytize for this citizen vigilante film, which really does paint Europe as a hellhole. It just starts with ominous music, and it says Europe.
Well, there was out of control rape and murder.
It's more dangerous in this country than it is in Europe.
Where there is danger in this country is because we fail to incarcerate repeat violent offenders. And that's, the classic sort of Soros DA or judges that fail to incarcerate repeat violent offenders. And if somebody gets arrested 50 times, literally, for violent crimes, and eventually they're going to kill somebody. So you either incarcerate them or people will die.
I think the prevalence of guns has quite a lot to do with it too. I mean, this is a much more dangerous country. Murder rates are much higher, in large part because there are so many guns.
Well, let me give you an interesting number. There are more people that die in Europe from heat deaths than people that die from gun deaths in America. Why aren't you writing an article about air conditioning?
Well, we've done several on air conditioning, and we had on our cover last week a whole long piece about why
pro air conditioning.
Yeah, we're very pro air conditioning.
Okay, good. Well, good.
Very pro.
Good
You should read us. Absolutely.
So, credit where it's due. Credit's where it's due.
I think you have a view of The Economist that is not entirely accurate. So I will. You come look at England, start reading The Economist, and I will, stand corrected on my criticism of you in this area.
There are many parts of Britain and Europe which are not safe. You can't just walk around.
But there are far more in this country. Far more.
No, I don't think so.
All right, let's go and get my fact checkers to check that.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
Let's move on from this, because I think I've got a sense of why you're doing what you're doing.
The point is not that the question is not is America perfect? The question is does Europe have a serious and growing problem?
The question
Absolutely,
is which is more dangerous. That's where we started this.
Europe has a serious and growing problem. I'm not going to say that the United States has no problems. Of course it does, but. We should all try to address these issues.
We can agree on that. We should all try to address the problems. My point was simply that I think you exaggerate the scale of Europe's problem, and that
I think people are asleep at the switch and do not realize the magnitude of the issue.
I also think that your interventions, however well-intentioned they may be, risk making Europe's problem a lot worse.
How?
Because you are putting your support behind people who are proto-authoritarians, who are not trying simply to, make sure there is better integration of Muslims or to secure the borders, but who have very clear fascist tendencies, and you will cause huge divisions within Europe.
I think what you're saying is total fiction, and really, I'm simply saying that that Europe has to have secure borders.
Okay, on that we agree.
And should not let in vast numbers of people with views that are antithetical to the accepted views in Europe, and where there will not be some level of safe cultural integration. This is simply common sense.
If all you are saying is Europe should have secure borders, I completely agree with you. Then I have misunderstood what your interventions have been on social media, because that is not what the view I have, not what I would conclude having seen what the people you are supporting and the things you're doing. But if that's your goal, I share your goal that Europe should have secure borders.
Yes.
I think that's perfectly agreeable. That gets me to a question.
And let me explain what the fundamental forcing function here is for why the borders are not secure, which is when you have a welfare state that provides substantial benefits to anyone who comes there, you create a very powerful economic forcing function for anyone who is below that standard of living to come to Europe. It is an obvious, powerful driving force, and people will come there if their standard of living is, from what they get in Europe, is above where they are elsewhere in the world. It's very basic.
I completely agree with that.
Yes,
I don't disagree.
It's a very
with that.
basic incentive structure.
I think economic conditions, economic influences determine a lot of migration. I think asylum is a separate issue, but I think you're absolutely right. There are pressures for migration. However, there are other things that you haven't focused on, which is migration brings a lot of benefits, and it also particularly does so in a continent like Europe, which is a rapidly aging continent. So we can agree that completely uncontrolled borders are a bad idea. But I think Europe benefits from having immigration, controlled immigration. It brings...
Yes, I'm in favor of immigration. Obviously, I'd be hypocritical if I wasn't, since I'm an immigrant to the United States. I'm in favor of immigration if the person immigrating is going to be a productive member of society, if they're going to be honest, and if they're not going to mistreat people in that country they're going to.
I can agree on all of those.
Yes.
But I think that Europe does better on that than you give it credit for. That's, I think, where we disagree. But let's move on. Tell me, what do you think people get most wrong about you?
Well, I mean, you just got a whole bunch of things wrong about me. Pretty much everything in just rewind the last 20 minutes is all wrong.
So I got wrong your
Well, let's not be repetitive here.
Okay. So that political side of you people get most wrong.
Yeah, my political views are very are centrist. They're not far right, and frankly, calling it far right, I think, is an insult to history, an insult to many peoples, and it is an outrageous falsehood. It's completely absurd. I literally have stated my position, which is that, and I've been very clear about this, which is that there need to be secure borders. That if there's an influx of immigrants, they need to be people who will agree that with Western ideals, with Western values, and if they don't, and if there's a long-term growth of people who do not, or in some cases are adamantly opposed to Western values, you are setting yourself up for civil war. This is obvious. A child can see this. But this is not a right-wing view. I'm simply stating reality.
Well, I think we can both agree that evidence will be able to decide which of us is more or less right. And we will find evidence for both of our views in different parts of Europe. The question is what the overall
I'm very
tells.
good at predicting the future. I'm not perfect, but I'm very good at predicting the future. My batting average is very high for a human. But this does have somewhat of a Cassandra effect, where people don't believe that what I'm saying is likely to be true, because I can see into the future with a higher not perfectly, but with a higher probability of success than most people. So, and including things that people believe to be, in some cases, counterintuitive. Again, I'm not saying I'm always right. I certainly am not. But my batting average is very good. But this does have, like I said, a Cassandra effect where people don't realize that what I'm saying will come to pass. Maybe not exactly in the timing that I thought, but it will come to pass. History will write the verdict. But I think you will see that very little of what I've said is inaccurate, and a supermajority of what I've said is very accurate and will come to pass, unless there's some change in direction.
Do you have higher confidence level in your expectations of the future for AI, the first part of our conversation, or the latter part, the political part?
AI is digital superintelligence. It's called the singularity, like a black hole, because you don't know what's going to happen after that. And it sort of sucks in everything. So I think really, in terms of the really big macro effects here, AI and robots will really dominate everything. So on a time scale that is less than 10 years.
Which probably renders this other stuff that we've been talking about less important and less relevant.
The AI robotics revolution will happen sooner. It'll happen sooner than civil war in Britain. I would say civil war in Britain is probably 20 years away, and the AI robot singularity is 10 years away.
Well, hopefully these benign, all-powerful AIs will prevent such outcomes.
They probably will.
Elon, I don't agree with everything you say, but it's always absolutely fascinating to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
No, you're welcome. I'm not boring.
You're definitely not boring.
好，因为实在是太精彩了，所以呢，我实在不忍心打断大家的观影，就决定全部都放到后面了，再稍微来谈一下我的感想。
我记得住，你说吧。
必须说，两个人其实在这个访谈过程当中都有一点情绪。好比说马斯克其实很明显他就很介意这个主持人一开始就把他设定为极右翼分子。那这个主持人呢，当然呢也不太喜欢马斯克，有时候就是讲得很绝对嘛，在他的一些地方上面，马斯克认为其实是错误的。但是我想要强调一个特别的观点，就是说他们之间的一个最大的差异，也是我本来曾经想要好好做一集，就是说你相不相信有所谓的文化融合的事情。好，比如说以美国做例子，世界各国的移民到美国来呢，它都可以是文化融合嘛，就融入了所谓的美国文化，对吗？可是这个有一个前提，一个外来的移民到这个国家，他必须是要渴望融入这个文化的。那通常我们讲正常的移民其实多半都是低文化向高文化去移动，就是说文化有没有高下之分？文化确实是有的，不然的话人类不会过去那么多的一些古文明会消失。很多的文明之所以它会消失，当然有很多复杂因素，但还有一个本身就是它的文明其实并不正确，或者说其实它并不适合人类的繁衍跟发展。好比说献人祭的这种文化它就会消失嘛。还有包含像 Jordan Peterson 老爷子说的，一个文化如果不崇尚母亲生育的这个角色，以及不崇尚婴孩所谓生命的话呢，这个文化它也会自取灭亡。那有趣就来了，今天所有的人他们能够到美国来，然后呢都会成为一个大熔炉。那前提是因为不管是谁，哪怕是穆斯林，他也要是比较偏世俗的穆斯林，也就是说他本身也是渴望融入美国文化。换句话说，欧洲大陆现在的这种想要发展的文化融合呢，本质上它就出现了一个很讽刺，而且也几乎可以说办不到的地方，那就是穆斯林文化呢，其实它是在消灭，或者说它在不断的让英国政府自己呢去打压了它国内传统的所谓西方的白人文化。好，那当然这种西方白人文化它有一部分很根植于的就是泛基督教文化，这个还是跟宗教本身有关。因为穆斯林他们的教义观呢是并不会想要真的去融合其他文化的。我讲的当然并不是世俗派的穆斯林。好，那穆斯林在教义里头呢，他们的教条主义很重，而且呢都是可以向异教徒，也就是非他宗教的人撒谎这样子的一种观念。所以穆斯林骗了左派，那也造成了让左派以为穆斯林在跟他们融合。可是我们看到欧国过去这么多的持刀杀人案，大量都是因为英国政府在保障穆斯林传统的宗教文化要配刀嘛。那更不要说就是英国有严重的抢劫跟强暴案的发生比率。像我自己完全的认同 Elon Musk 所说的，而且我也认为英国迟早会爆发内战。但是呢，我却从来不知道Elon Musk 居然说过这样的话，而且我也不知道 Elon Musk 对欧洲有发出过这么多强烈的批判。所以你要说真的大家都是受 Elon Musk 影响嘛，恐怕这个经济学人还是太小看了。大家现在特别是网络媒体的普及化之后，大家对于资讯的一个收集的能力，根本基本上来说，英国现在就是一个完全覆水难收的国家。我认为连法拉奇上台他也已经没有能力可以再去驱赶掉这么庞大的这一批穆斯林了。可是这一批是注定他不会融入你当地文化，甚至政府过去 Starmer 在打压自己的白人或泛基督教文化的时候，你很显然的所谓的融合不过就是忍让。就是呢受不了他们的人越来越多，但大家呢都碍于政府的高压政策，只好被迫忍让着。那这个迟早会发生内战，而且我认为是无法避免。那坦白说，美国现在也有穆斯林化的情况，就好像我们看到纽约市长马丹尼，但是美国至少川普在移民管制上面呢已经非常有成效了，所以美国的穆斯林化呢相对而言没有欧洲大陆来的这么严重。所以再加上他们这一批人在欧洲来讲，你已经完全无法定义他们是所谓的非法移民了。就是因为政府过去已经庇护他们到跟公民没有两样了。所以未来法拉奇，我认为他在面对到这一批穆斯林，当然他有没有一些更有效的政策我不敢讲，可是就以目前发展来看呢，为什么马斯克会说他认为会在20年后，因为穆斯林他再过20年呢，他们的人口 population 呢会更大，他们在教义上面呢完全无法去融入，甚至你可以看到很夸张，就是现在穆斯林早就已经在伦敦街头呼吁政府要立所谓的穆斯林法了。 那你就想，他们都想要来干涉英国的法律，怎么可能他是有心跟你做融合呢？所以我只能说，像左派经济学人张你的这种视角，其实完全是温水煮青蛙而不自知。我个人是完全同意 Elon Musk， 只不过另外一点我就不敢说了，就是10年内 AI 要先统治人类呢？
我的天哪，这么神奇吗？
因为不是我那么了解的领域，所以会不会真的10年发生呢？我反而是没看法的。但是就英国20年后发生内战，我也认为这是英国回不了头的状况，因为你但凡去看英国，几乎每年都换一个首相，通常这都是亡国之兆。一个正常的国家，首相是不会这样子频繁的换动的，这都说明这个国家它本身已经在一个失控的状态，而且呢是没有办法刹车的，也就是说它的混乱只会越来越多。好，那当然法拉奇现在上来之后会不会有所和缓？我认为会，但是这个和缓有没有办法足以去拯救英国呢？我认为很难。美国未来川普的影响力也未必会一直永远持续下去，所以美国自己未来也有它的挑战要走了，那更不要说欧洲这些国家了。有机会我好好的来谈一集穆斯林，目前看起来全世界某种程度上潜藏着最大赢家恐怕是穆斯林。那这个有机会再来说。我个人是觉得这一集文化论战蛮有趣蛮丰富的，就像 Elon Musk 说的，没有错，美国的问题很多，包含我自己。我虽然是保守主义者，但是我非常反对美国枪支泛滥的文化，我是反对人民有拥枪权的。可是呢，我也必须说，美国在川普执政的时候，他没有在恶化，可是欧洲像英国是严重的恶化下去，更不要说英国的言论审查现在根本不是张你所说的认为也有该检讨的问题，根本不是，好吗？英国基本上现在比共产主义国家还要共产主义，你根本就是一个全世界对言论不自由最独裁的国家了。所以他讲的我觉得都太过轻描淡写，而这也是马斯克恰恰坚定的告诉他说，张你是活在象牙塔里面，没有认清英国的现状。这希望好不好？这个以后多一点英国的主流媒体来采访马斯克，我相信这类的火花还会蛮多见的。不得不说，马斯克我觉得他确实展现出了他的智商所匹配的一种谈话方式，就是他永远在谨慎的去用字跟遣词。虽然你看起来好像他有一点笨拙，他不是这个灵巧如簧的这个表达方式，可是马斯克基本上他讲出来的东西都是精确，而且他对于他自己所相信，他不会轻易的随便妥协或是动摇。其实我反而会觉得马斯克表达出来的东西是他相信他已经了解的够清楚，那他的这一份自信反而是张你所没有的。也就是张你是否如他自己所说的欧洲就那么好呢？我的看法，他自己其实也有很多的自我矛盾与怀疑。不论如何，希望这集影片你会喜欢。我们这边是超级神队，我们就下部影片再见，拜拜。
Is Christ alone, our hope now forever.